we will, let me just double check here, make sure the recording is running. Well, check the chat box for questions and whatnot, and those that we didn't get to, we can always get to in the next class, because we're going to keep doing this ongoing as long as you guys like the sessions. Okay, so let me see here. Ooh, that's dark. Hang on, sorry about that. All right. So Elizabeth asked, let me see here. If you were a first-time author who is self-published, what are the 3 to 4 things you would suggest for this particular person to do in marketing their book? Also, if you want to write for other sites, such as Huffington Post, what's the best way to do so? That's a great question, and I think it would be good to start off there, because as a first-time author, it's oftentimes really difficult. There are 4,500 books published every single day. So what does a first-time author need to do? Well, you know, I think aside from obviously, so when I'm giving this advice, the obvious piece of this is we're going to assume that everybody has a really good book and it's been edited, and so all of that due diligence is done. But I would say the first thing that you really want to do is you want to start looking at building reviews. So you want to reach out to bloggers. I mean, people like what other people like, and it is more challenging to get reviews for a book. I understand that, because we live in an age where there are so many books published every day. But getting more reviews for a book is really, really important. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be start to build your superfan list, because it's going to be important to start building reader, turning off my phone, to start building reader momentum. And superfans, and we can address superfans certainly on this call if any of you have questions, or on future calls, but superfans are people who are just rabid fans of your particular book, and you've built them up over time, and they can also help to get reviews and things like that. It helps spread the word about your book. The other thing that you should be doing is the Amazon optimization, which I realize we're here to talk about Amazon today. So the Amazon optimization, really important. Figure out your keywords. We're going to talk about keywords a little bit later. So that, there's a lot that you can be doing. You can talk about, running ads and doing specials, and doing promos, and doing that kind of stuff. But those are really some of the core things that you definitely need to be doing. All right, so thank you so much for that first question. I appreciate it. All right, so we have more questions, and I'm just going to pull up my question sheet here. So someone asked, how can I increase the likelihood of my book to get the highest ranking on Amazon right from the beginning without spending any money? How do I keep the high ranking of my books on an ongoing basis without spending any money? And if I want to spend money, what's the cheapest way to do that? I love that. Okay, so basically, the goal here is to sell tons of books without spending money. That's not always really possible, except that there are ways that you can launch your book without necessarily putting a ton of money into the launch of it. And we did, so everything that I talk about in this class, or most everything that I talk about, is based on some experimentation that we've done with a particular fiction title. And I'll show you what that is. We can show you the screenshot of it. But when you launch a book on Amazon, one of my recommendations is that you put this book up for pre-order. Now, you should keep your pre-order pretty short. So I would recommend 3 weeks at the most, because you really don't want to market your pre-order too heavily, because the book is not for purchase yet. So especially if you don't have any kind of a following and they're necessarily waiting on the book, you may wind up with a bunch of people that see this and think, oh, I'm in the mood for a mystery and this book isn't ready yet, so I'm going to go buy something else. Okay, so you want to sort of limit your pre-order. So doing a pre-order on Amazon, 3 weeks, something like that, and then get those super fans, or get those fans, offer to give them a copy of the book in exchange for an honest review. Because here's the thing that I have found: if you launch your book on Amazon in a pre-order, and I would imagine you don't necessarily have to do this with a pre-order, but this is how I experimented with it. So you launch it, and as soon as you launch it, there are all these reviews that are popping up. So within 36 to 48 hours. The second piece is that you want to launch it with a you want to launch it with a minimal price. So I would not launch it at full price. I would launch it at a lower price, even half of what you think the full price should be of the ebook. Okay, so for the book that we tested, we launched it at, I think it was $2 or $2.99. Okay, so it was sort of half of what we would end up, pricing it at. What that did is it created a momentum within Amazon that surged this book and continued to carry it for 3 months. And we were so we were testing this book. We were not necessarily doing any kind of marketing with it. All right, so that's one thing that's definitely one thing that you can do, and I hope that that answers your question. All right, so what are some things you can do? So Kurt asked, what are some things that you can do to help ensure better ranking in Amazon Kindle? Well, the keywords, and let me kind of walk you guys through the keywords right now, because this is something that is very confusing to a lot of folks. And I actually have another question here, I think, relative to keywords, because the guy wrote on my Facebook page and he goes, I did all this research and now I don't know where to go with these keywords. I don't know what to do next. So we're going to hopefully get some time to walk you through that. Keywords is actually an incorrect word. It's actually keyword strings. So nobody searches based on a singular keyword, right? So if you're going onto Amazon and you're looking for a romance suspense, or you're looking for a finance book or a social media book, whatever, you're probably not going to go in there and just type into Amazon finance or type into Amazon social media. You're probably going to be more specific. And this is where a lot of authors get confused in terms of their keywords. And Mikhail, who was on another session that I taught, he's a gentleman from Mexico. He and I had a conversation about this in email around various keywords. And I actually think that we had that same conversation on the webinar as well, because a lot of what was being discussed during that particular Amazon session was singular keywords. And you have to think about keyword strings. So think about how people are searching, right? So if you are, for example, if you have a suspense romance novel, or a romance novel based on second chances, or a social media book for beginners, those are actually all ways that people may search on Amazon. So I suggest that you go into the Amazon search bar and start to type in these search strings and sort of see what comes up, or type in the singular keyword and see what comes up. And a couple of tips here. So you want to be sure and do it from the actual Kindle store. So you want to make sure that you're doing this from the actual Kindle store. So don't just go to Amazon.com and type this in, because that will because all that'll do is it'll drop you into the search of the entire Amazon site. And you want to really narrow down. You want to be more specific. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're searching on the Kindle store, and then just kind of experiment with some keyword strings. I will tell you that keyword research is probably the biggest piece of the Amazon stuff that you will do. And it's not always an exact science, because a lot of times what I'll do is I will test keywords and kind of put them out there and see how the book does. And then I may come back and modify them slightly, right? And I've actually put keywords into books when I've been, working on the Amazon optimization campaigns, and the books have actually lost ranking. So I'll go into the back end quickly and change them up, and the books come back up quickly. But the keyword strings, you're allowed to have up to 7 for your ebook. So 7 keyword strings, and that's really where you want to focus. So I know that's that's a long answer, but it also covers several of the questions that we have in here. All right. So remember, keyword strings. You also want to look as you are comparing. These various keyword strings, you also want to take a look at what the sales rank is going to be. So what are the sales ranks of those particular keywords? Because that's another thing that I look for too, is if I'm looking at a particular keyword string and the sales rank is really high. So to be clear, the larger the number, the less the book is selling. So if you have a sales rank of 200,000, your book is probably selling, maybe 1 book a year or 1 book a month or something that you obviously are not going to be able to retire off of. Okay, so very high sales rank, very low sales. And here's the other thing too, if you are in the top 27,000 on Amazon, you're considered the top 1%. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. All right, let's take a look and see some other questions. Mikkel, thank you so much for posting that. Mikkel posted something in the chat. All right, guys, let me go over here and see what are the questions we have. Karen asked, great question. I would like to know if you have to have a KDP account to improve print book listings. In fact, right now, I'm almost primarily focused on improving print book sales and did not realize the book I bought, the book I loaded and posted, let me see, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Primarily focused on improving print book sales. Did not realize the book I bought was primarily about ebooks. The Amazon Association page for loading and posting print book content are very limited. I'm not sure that I understand that entire question. So Karen, if you made it to the call, feel free to post some clarification in the chat. But let me see what the best that I can do to answer that question. So you don't have to have a KDP account for your book to do well, but I really recommend it, and I'll tell you why. I recommend it because the more that you can control, when you have a KDP account, and for those of you who don't know what KDP is, it's Kindle Direct Publishing. So there are two forms of Kindle Direct Publishing. So you can do KDP or KDP Select, right? And KDP Select is where you're limited to Amazon. So you have to stay with Amazon for 90 days. But Kindle Direct Publishing allows you to access all of your data. So it allows you to change your keywords, to change your categories pretty much at a moment's notice. And I know we have somebody either on the call or who certainly sent in a question about, what is, about what is, what can they do in terms of access if their publisher has published the book, and we'll cover that in a minute. But that would be my suggestion. And for those of you who aren't familiar with KDP, I am going to just kind of show you what that dashboard looks like. So I'm going to log into, let me pause this and share my screen. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what KDP looks like, hope you all can see my screen right now. So this is your KDP dashboard. So I'm signing in. This is actually one of the books that we've been testing. So I'm signing in under the author's account. So this is where you access all the data on the books, right? And then you can get into reports, and you can change data and whatnot. You can promote and advertise. But this is essentially what KDP looks like. All right. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to, but it's so much easier if you do, because you can, like I said, you can get in there and you can change your data at a moment's notice. So let me go back over to, hang on one second. Let me just pause this. All right, so let me go back over to the questions. All right, so Mark, great question. Hope you're on the call. What are the best ways of getting reviews for Amazon? Does Amazon restrict reviews to only those who purchase books on Amazon? That is a great question. So we have, oh, hold on one second. Let me do this differently. There we go. So I don't know if y'all heard about this, but Amazon is really cracking down on fake reviews, which I think they should. It's hard though. It's hard to know, I mean, Fiverr, they're selling reviews for $5 a review. That's kind of fake, but for the most part, you don't always know. And there are companies that are set up and they can shut them down. So I realize Amazon's kind of doing their due diligence about that. But that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether or not you buy the book off of Amazon. So we have reviewers. So whenever we send a book out to reviewers for an author that we're working with, we will send them the book for free. So that means that they have not bought the book off of Amazon, and the reviewer can review the book. So the answer to your question is yes and no. If you do buy the book off of Amazon, it does say verified Amazon purchase. Does that make a difference? Not entirely sure that it does. But The fact that Amazon is cracking down has nothing to do with whether or not you've purchased the book on Amazon. It's about the integrity of the review and whether you were paid just to say, hey, it's 5 stars and I absolutely love this book. Okay, so there's a big difference there. All right, so let's take the next question. We are just zipping through these questions. I want to try to get to all of them. Judy, where to find categories? Please talk about where to go on Amazon to see category choices and how to change them. Oh, this is a great question. I am going to share my webcam again, and we are going to, let me pause this. Share this. Is way too many buttons. I'm getting a little confused. All right, so if you guys can't see my screen, by all means, put that in the chat box. So I am going to show you where to find your categories. All right, you guys ready? So go to, and I'm going to use the Kindle store because I like it. I think you have more options in the Kindle store. So I'm going to highlight the Kindle store and I'm going to click go. Now this takes me obviously to everything in the Kindle store, and I'm going to click ebooks. Now on the left hand side, you will see every possible category, right, that they have in ebooks. So let me just click on mystery, thriller. Actually, you know what? Let me do this differently. Let me click on business and money because the categories are much deeper here. So business and money, now I'm looking at, and I want you to also be aware of something. So do you see the numbers in brackets next to the various categories? Those are how many books are in each of those categories. So ideally, you know, it would be great to have something that is in a much more narrow category, right? So we have, so this is now business and money, marketing and sales. Okay, I can go even deeper and I can go into customer service, which only has 1,800 books in it, 1806. Okay, so that's where you find categories. So again, you go to the Kindle store. Let me just click back. Yay! So you go to the Kindle store and you click on any one of these and it'll start to take you down the quote unquote rabbit hole to get to more to get to more categories. And you can see something. Here's an interesting little story here. Teen Health. We were working with this author and she had a book on bullying and teen suicide, and she had it under suicide, which was getting no searches on Amazon. It's really interesting, particular categories that really get very little traction. And so we moved it to teen health, which, as you can see, has only 113 other books in it, and it's doing, you know, and it's doing considerably better. All right, so so let me see here who else I know there's several other questions in here. Let me see here. Nicole, that's a great question. Is there benefit to going with KDP Select? So my suggestion is yes. KDP Select allows you to do promotions that you otherwise may not be able to do within the system. So for example, you can do free ebook promotions, those types of things. Generally, what I recommend is keep it in KDP Select for 90 days, and then you can flip it out and you can put it into other systems. You can put it into iTunes and things like that. The difference between KDP Select, or the difference between Kindle Direct Publishing and your print data, and some people will refer to it as your Amazon metadata. So the difference between the two is that you are only allowed to have 5 keyword strings for your print data, but you're only allowed to have 5 keyword strings for your print data, but you're allowed to have 7 for your Kindle book. So there's quite a bit of advantage. Great question on the audio. So somebody asked, can you do strings for audio and print? Audiobooks are so much tougher because audiobooks actually come through ACX, depending obviously on how you have produced the book. But ACX, which is Amazon's Audible component, does not allow you to have any kind of fun with keywords, which I'm hoping that they are going to be changing. All right, so let's see here. More question. How do you change the categories? Great question. That was going to be the next question. All right, so how you change the categories, and I think I am still sharing my screen, is you can go into each of these books. You can see, as I've highlighted here, it says edit details, and you will change the categories in the back of the book. However, in some cases, you may not find these categories because so there's a term in the industry called BISAC categories, which are the industry standard categories that you will see for any bookstore. They adhere to the BISAC categories. However, Amazon's does not always do that. So when you go into the back end, and I'm going to mute somebody here.
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm muting somebody who just popped on. So Amazon's back-end categories adhere to the BISAC ones. However, on the Kindle page, as I was showing you, you can be a lot more creative, and you may not always see these showing up in your your KDP backend. What you do in that case is you are going to write to Amazon via Amazon Author Central. So you're going to go, you're going to go to authorcentral.amazon.com, click on help, and ask them to make that change, and they can do that for you. All right. So Nicole asked, my first book is 3 years old. Should I take it out? Still selling some every month? No, I mean, and Nicole, it would actually also depend on what your book is about. I mean, if your book is dated in terms of information, then you might want to remove it. But if it's not, then you would probably, if you wanted to boost it, I would go in there and change the Amazon keywords, change the categories, and get some fresh new reviews for it. That would be my suggestion. Okay, so let me see here. Oh, this is a great question. Carol said I have the impression that nonfiction books are more successfully targeted with keywords than fiction. No, that is actually not true. You can find really, really good keywords for fiction. And actually fiction in ebook tends to sell better than nonfiction. So yeah, you can absolutely find great keywords for fiction. Faith, thank you so much for posting that. I'm glad that, oh, it's nonfiction for small business. So your book that has been up there is nonfiction for small business. I would say that it really depends, because even, small business things change, but if you're still selling books and it's still a viable topic, I would, maybe re-promote it or even re-release it. There's another beautiful benefit to having a book that's a little bit older. If you want to do some slight updates to it and re-release it, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so I am going to, all right, so hang on just one second. I'm going to pause this. I am going to pull up some more questions here. Stephen asks, how do you identify a competitor's word strings? The answer is you don't. Unless they tell you, there's really no way to know. Does Amazon give promotional priority to books in CreateSpace or Kindle programs? That's a very, very good question. The answer is it's very likely, but it's not publicly acknowledged. So the answer really is I don't know. Tanya asked about a traditional publisher. If you have a book that's traditionally published and you don't have access to the keywords, what I recommend is that you email them and do the keyword research and email them and ask them if they can make the changes. And in 99% of the cases, they will. If they don't, you may be able to access that through Amazon Author Central. So I would call Author Central if you really can't get a hold of your publisher and they are MIA on this book, then you can call Amazon Author Central and see if they can help you out. By the way, Amazon Author Central is a fabulous resource. So I highly encourage you to use it. Okay, let me just go back here to some questions that we have on the call. How do you find someone to do a voiceover? Elizabeth, how do you find someone to do a voiceover for an audiobook? Some voiceover people will do it based on royalty share, but most of them will do it based on payment. They are on average of 250 to 275 per finished hour. Keep in mind that it takes about between 8 to 10 hours to finish a book. So, you know, when I've done audiobooks, it's been around $3,000 to $4,000 to do it. Be very clear that the audiobook is going to benefit you in some way, right? And be very clear that the audiobook is going to be something that your audience actually wants. So I would take a look at the competition to see, for example, I write a book called Red Hot Internet Publicity. I would never do that in audio, primarily because it becomes a workbook for my audience. So that's not something that I would ever do. If I have a book about how to get published, which I probably won't rewrite, but if I did, that could be something that I would put in audio because it's much less of a workbook. All right. So, okay. So Nicole, thank you very much for that compliment. I appreciate that. So let's talk briefly about the re-release, because we had a question about the re-release of a book or the release of a new book if you have an older book, and Nicole's question actually ties into that. So if you have a book that's coming out, let's say, you know, January or February or whatever, and you are you know, you have other books or a book that's already been out on the shelves, I would really recommend that you do something called a perma-free on the other book if you possibly can, because depending on how the first book is selling, it many times it will help you to sell the other book when it's free. Now, you can either do a perma-free or you can do a couple of days of a free download. Either way, whatever you choose to do, I would really encourage you to put something in the back of that book that leads people to your new title, and use this promo, again, whether it's a perma-free or whether it's a you know, a 2-day freebie or a 1-day freebie. You definitely want to have something in the back of that book that is going to push people to the new book. So you want to use this sort of as the lead float in the parade, okay? That would be my suggestion. And again, in cases where, you know, the book is still relevant, I think that it's a fabulous idea. Red Hot Internet Publicity, as I mentioned, is done and it's coming out shortly. Should be launched on pre-order sometime, I think in November or maybe even early December. And I plan on using other books that I have to, you know, as perma-free titles to push to that one. You may not want to offer your book permanently, and by perma-free, by the way, I mean that this is a book that is permanently free on Amazon because you have put it free on another site like iTunes or Nook or something like that, and Amazon has to price match it. All right. And in another class, we'll talk a little bit more about price matching and how you do that. But I'm a huge fan of free if it's used correctly, and anybody that has followed my stuff knows that I'm a huge fan of free because free helps to elevate other books. Free is never a good idea if you only have one book, unless you're using the free book as some other type of tool, like a leader to, you know, a bigger program or consulting or something like that. But if you have more than one book, especially generally it works really well if you have 2 other books, free can be a really, really great tool, but you've got to make free work for you. So and anybody here, by the way, on the call, if you're ever doing any kind of a discounted promo, so if you marked your book down to 99 cents or you've marked your book free, you really want to make sure and utilize that freebie, because consumers love to get deals, but they also need to be told what to do. And this doesn't mean that your consumer is not intelligent. It just means that this is part of the reason why, you know, so few people who read books, just average consumers, actually review them, because most of them don't know that reviews are helpful. This is part of the reason why in every single book that we work with and in every single book that I publish, I always encourage the author to put a letter in the back of the book leading them to something. So ask them for a review. If that's the only thing that you want, ask them for a review, but you have got to make that book work for you. All right. Let me see if we have any more questions. Otherwise, we are going to wrap up. And I hope this has been helpful for you. I would very much love to hear your feedback on this webinar. We are going to be doing a follow-up. We also have a new program which is very inexpensive. I think it's like $199, and it's called Why Is My Book Not Selling, which is really a book evaluation. So if you will follow up with information on that, so you can get that if you want. We are going to be doing these monthly. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you so much. This is Penny Sansevieri with Author Marketing Experts. It's been my pleasure to present this webinar for you. Thank you. Bye-bye.